we're on. And yeah, I think
Awesome.
just to kind of touch upon, and I introduced you before the episode. Don't worry, you're kind of giving me deer in headlights.
I was like, bro, they don't know who I am.
They will. Dinesh just, no, I'm kidding. But one of the things that I think is, the downside to being a famous talking head is, unfortunately, we're in clip culture, right? Nobody wants to sit down and fucking watch a 2-hour podcast if you're not already a fan. And the fans are there for a reason. They're not the ones who you need to worry about. It's the mainstream, like, how many people say, like, oh, Skip Bayless is an idiot. Oh, Stephen A. Smith's an idiot. It's like, you do realize they're on TV 3 hours every day.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, like, for someone, like, I'll admit, like, I don't watch sports much, but I know who those guys are, right? So I know them by the clips, but, and only for the clips because I don't watch basketball anyways, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like I care about what they're talking about for 3 hours. But, like, yeah, Stephen A. Smith is a hilarious guy. So I'll admit that I only know him from the clips, right? But but I give him what's it called, benefit of the doubt. I'm like, he can't be like just talking all this nonsense all the time, right? I'm like, he probably has good points when he's on the show. He's not just some goof 100%, but I don't know. I don't actually watch him. So.
And he isn't. It's difficult though, because like with talk radio and TV and all this shit, like, again, you're on for a long time, and you need to do this you need to entertain. It's not just like, okay, well, this is what I think. Sometimes, when
you got to fill in the gaps, basically.
Exactly.
Right? Like, if the show's running for 3 hours, sometimes you got to like fill in that time. That's what like those night shows do now, right? Those late night shows, they have all those games and stuff. Nobody cares about the interviews except the particular fans. Before, it's like you watch the like back before the internet, I guess, you would watch the shows to your favorite celebrities coming on, so you're going to watch the entire show, right, and get to know these other new celebrities, and also because you like the host, right? So you watch the entire thing. But now it's just like you watch whichever interviews of a celebrity you like, but then it's all like segmented from there.
Well, I mean, now if you're running out of ideas, just find somebody who people want to cancel and you'll make headlines, right?
No shit,
Elon's hosting SNL.
Are we allowed to swear? Can I swear?
Oh, fuck yeah, go say whatever you want.
Cool. Yeah, I was like, shit. Oh no.
I don't understand why people are upset at Elon hosting SNL.
Yeah, no, it's funny because like people have, I think the main thing is just because he's so rich, right? And like generally there's this kind of ethos of not liking rich people, unless they're super supportive of your activism, then it's like super on board with it, right? And which Elon hasn't been, because if Elon was touting like the woke shit, right? I'm using woke to be general, right? People will be like, oh, what does woke really mean? Like, so, but yeah,
the mainstream left narrative.
Mainstream, not a mainstream dogmatic, let's say cancel culture, vindictive,
orthodoxy,
identitarian, that stuff. Because there's mainstream socialists, and socialists, are different. They like the actual socialists, right? The actual Marxists, they're left, right? And they're far left, you could say, right? But they're the ones who are actually, right, socialists, Marxists, whatever, communists, they also reject all this woke shit as well, right?
Oh, okay.
That's one thing, like, you'll find, like, if you actually like read these people, right, they're also against all this stuff. They think it's fucking terrible. Right?
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, from a broader label standpoint, like, I guess, would this fall under postmodernism, or would it fall under like applied postmodern social justice?
Like James Lindsay, applied postmodernism. Yeah. So no, wokeism would be like applied postmodernism, right? Generally. So like, I haven't completed the entire book, right? But Cynical Theories by James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose, but I follow James Lindsay as and sometimes he can get a little aggressive, but a lot of the times, so he explains exactly what the thought processes are and where they derive from wokeism, right? And they do have, there's a connection. You can make the connection if you read into postmodernism, newer postmodernism, Marxism, right? And to be clear, and Lindsay makes this distinction, right? Like wokeism isn't Marxism, right? There's a distinction, because wokeism Marxism is about class, right? So this is why Marxists like you get pissed off at woke people, because they're centering it on race, right? When it's about class, right? Their whole thing is about class. And so so wokeism is more from postmodernism, and postmodernism technically it rejects Marxism, it rejects those narratives in general. So Marxism is a modernist perspective, a theory, right? Marx. And so postmodernism, the whole thing about postmodernism was to reject meta narratives, they call it, right? And so technically it rejects Marxism, right? In that sense, but you can draw the line, right? You can see how it does connect, right? So applied postmodernism, as Lindsay describes it, is basically the original postmodernists. So Foucault, Derrida, although Derrida you could say post-structuralist instead. People like sorry, I'm drawing a blank, but there's
Lyotard.
Lyotard. Lyotard. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it makes me laugh every time I see it.
Oh, big time.
No, those guys, right? So, and from there you get critical race theory, right? Which Lindsay also makes a distinction between, right? Like critical race theory and critical theory from the Marxists kind of derivative critical theory. Anyway, so postmodernism, those guys, the original ones, they were like, they were just the thinkers, right? They were just kind of like making these grand theories. So, and then applied postmodernism was the second kind of wave, right? So people like Foucault and Derrida, where they're just saying stuff, right? And some of the stuff that's interesting, if you read it, it was like, this and this, but what are you gonna do? That was kind of like
there's no actual
there's an actual thing. Activism, right? So the next wave came around. So as Lindsay describes, is that applied postmodernism is those theories, but taken into practice, right? Put into activism, right? So actually, because what they saw was that these guys aren't actually going far enough with their theorizing, right? They're only formulating these things, but they don't have any action plan to go with it or whatever, they're kind of lazy in that sense. And also, right, there's the critique that you'll notice that those guys, the original guys, they're all straight white male, or straight are white men, right? Foucault was gay, I'm pretty sure.
Foucault was gay.
So they're a white man, right? And we all know the problem with that.
So, being white's evil.
Exactly. Disclaimer, that's a joke, but or not, whoever's depending on who's listening to the disclaimer.
If you have a cab in your bio, it wasn't a joke.
It wasn't a joke. Exactly. It's a multiracial white supremacy going on here.
Oh, big time.
So those guys are white, so that was also a critique, right? So these guys aren't going far enough, and they're the white men, right? There's something needs to be done, and these guys are coming from the white male perspective. So we need to actually put it into action and make these racial connections as well. And also and we say racial, right, but also gender. I was thinking of is it genderal? What's it? Sexual?
Gender and also sexual identity as well.
Exactly. So you can, it's an easy connection you can make, right? And people and it's kind of hard to follow along as well, right? Like it's an easy connection if you read into it, right?
Yes.
But it's I don't like to cast intention onto people, but there is in a way, right, this intentional or unintentional kind of kind of blurring the lines, right? Blurring it up, making it difficult to say, hey, he said this, because they say it in such a drawn out and hard to follow kind of way, right? They're like, so they can deny it if they ever get called out on it, right? This and that. So Derrida especially, like we had to read Derrida for one class in particular in university, and like even the professors like, yeah, you know, just read it, right? Or we'll discuss it. You're probably not going to know what he's saying, but yeah, so it's hard to follow along because it's purposely written that way. At least it seems it's purposely written that way, right? To make it as confusing as possible, right? And just to have these little kind of like conclusion is embedded in there, right? And if you're smart enough, you can find it. But it's also written in a way that in case there's any attack on it, there's a way to escape from it, to be like, no, this is what I said.
Exactly.
It's so confusing so sorry, I ramble on a lot.
No, it's okay. It's okay, man. Go off.
No. But yeah, that's kind of, so when you draw those when you figure it out what they're saying, right, you can easily draw the connections. And the theorists, today, postmodern theorists, critical race theorists, queer theorists, and all that, they cite these people. Yes. It's not like they're independently coming up with the stuff, right? They'll cite Foucault, and they'll cite maybe not Derrida, but they'll cite the people from the Frankfurt School and stuff like that, right? Who were the actual explicitly Marxist, right? They weren't, like, not by my opinion, but explicitly they were, the critical theorists were Marxist. And so so you can draw the line, and if they say no, we have nothing, you're drawing this fake, you're making this false equivalence, we got nothing, right? But these would be the same people who would be like, oh, if you went to a gas station owned by a Trump voter, right, you should
burn in hell.
Yeah, you should burn in hell, right? Like they'll make these connections right away with, like, these kind of connections, right? But then the more clear connections that you can literally make with the Marxist thought, right, and postmodernist thought, critical theory, critical race theory, all that stuff, and wokeism, so-called wokeism, they'll deny it, right? But yeah,
it's one of those things that I was kind of reading on it, because one, I found so fucking, it's difficult to get through readings on postmodernism, man. Like, it's hard because I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. You can't define it. One,
people exactly, like, so people who are postmodernists themselves is hard to read, but then because of that, people explaining or critiquing or bashing postmodernism, right, it's equally confusing. Because the source material is so confusing, right? And this is coming from someone who, in university, right, sociology major, right, you kind of, lots of classes like touch on this stuff, right? I don't want to make the broad kind of label with the broad brush that, like, all of them defend it, right? All of the professors are defending this stuff, or support this stuff, right?
They lean that way, though. They lean to that weird.
Yeah, if you were to just make your own assumptions, right? If you were to be like, looking back at it, yeah, it did seem like, because I know now more about this kind of thought theories, these kind of theories, and this kind of thought process and stuff now from my own reading, right? And I compare it to the stuff that I was taught in school, in classes. I'm like, I didn't know about this thing. I didn't know I don't know, he was actually like a part of the Communist Party. Like that seems like something you would mention, right? Because if they were part of a Nazi party, right? If they were like, colluding with Nazi party, like a theorist or something like that, or like if they were a supporter of some sort of fascism or something, right? You definitely hear about it. But if there was a theorist, like let's say he had a strong connection with the Communist Party, he was a leader of some sort of like revolutionary group, they don't mention that. The backstory doesn't matter, right? So like looking back at it, it's evident, but I wouldn't say professors that I've had are so far gone, because a lot of them were fair to me, at least, because I'd be the loser, like raising my hand all the time, like, well, what about,
and they'd be confused because you're brown, so like, what the hell is going on?
What the hell, dude? You're not supposed to. Who gave you?
They'd be like, bro, you can be whoever you want, unless you want to be conservative, then you can't.
Exactly.
Then you have to go fuck yourself.
Not even conservative. Like if you're like,
if you're a centrist,
if you're to the right of, if you're to the right of, like, I don't know, like Hillary Clinton, right, or Joe Biden, like, and like from
their modern policies,
their
right?
Stuff, you would say lots of people make the critique, like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, the modern Democratic Party aren't left, they're right wing, right? But that's only from that you can kind of make that argument from Canadian perspective, but the left-right spectrum is way different in the American standard than it is European, and from that the Canadian perspective, right? Because they kind of like fought to get they fought off the monarchy, where Canadians like, you can stay if you want.
Well, I remember when you talk about university, it's interesting because I always felt like my profs, and I'm a 2-time dropout, so take this with a grain of fucking salt, but I always felt like the profs leaned left inherently, and there's nothing wrong with that per se. I think, as time goes on, things change. To progress, to be more progressive, just makes sense in general if you're in university, right? There's nothing, and universities have always been left-leaning. But back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was more like 4 liberals to 1 conservative prof. Now it's like 17 liberals to 1 conservative prof. According to Jonathan Haidt, my centrist king. He's not a centrist, but he's. But anyways, so I remember
he seems centrist a lot of the time, just because he gives credence to.
Yeah, and that's one of the point that he makes, and James Lindsay also makes, is like the point of academia isn't to I was going to say euthanize. It's not that either, but it's not to evangelize. Yeah. It's to provide people with knowledge and to let them think on their own. And I remember being surprised when I had this one prof who was very like, students would give, have you ever read the short story Cat Person?
Cat Person?
Yeah.
I don't think so, no.
It's about this sexual encounter that goes like, it's consensual sex that happens. These 2 people meet, they have sex, but super awkward and weird. And then the guy like calls a girl like a whore at the end for not returning his calls. And it's super weird. And it's actually very good. Weird though. And when we were analyzing it, there were, if people gave like, the classic, he's a man, do better response, he would give pushback. And I remember being shocked by that, because I was like, whoa, like, you're not just supposed to blame men for everything. Like, what the hell? Like, and obviously the character did do some fucking weird things in the story. Yeah. But he was also saying like, of course, he gave it credit, but he also gave pushback on it and forced us to think. And I was like, wow, I've never had a prof do this to us before. And then, reading Haidt and now James Lindsay is like, oh shit, that's what university's supposed to be like, at least in theory.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like, like, I don't want to cast it on entire university system, but I mean, it kind of like, if you were just kind of take a glimpse of it, right? Like you would get that idea, right? If you were to just be like, gun to your head, like, which way do you think it's leaning? Say left, right? Especially me being in the social sciences, right? Social sciences, humanities, arts, obviously, so I'm a film minor, right? So it's pretty left there, right? Performing arts, right? And then you see it. One thing, it's like there, right? And you just you go into kind of those kind of studies, arts, right? And in broad terms, you're kind of expecting them to be left, but then you see it like trickle into other things, right? And that's where it's more concerning. But definitely these there are professors who will kind of, if you didn't know any better, you would think they're telling you, you would think they were telling you objectively, right? Until you learn about it later, right? Like until you maybe read about it later, you're like, oh, hey, no, there's more to the story. Why didn't the professor mention this part, right? It's that, at least in my experience, right? I don't think I've had a professor like explicitly say what they support or who they support. I've had professors like losing their minds when Trump won, right? So in 2016 and 2016,
yeah.
right? Yeah, no, I've had professors like kind of losing their minds, like, oh, this like I just don't understand. There was one professor, it was like a religion, a faculty of religion. I forgot which class it was. I've had him a few times, but he was like, I just can't wrap my head around it, right? I'm like, if you can't wrap your head around it, right? Like it's like I don't know. Yeah, you should be teaching from a way that, you help other people wrap their heads around why certain ideologies, certain ideas, certain things, why people gather around those ideas, right? And if you don't know yourself, right, at least kind of other rather than otherizing, rather than being like, hey, there's no good reason why somebody would support this thing, right? Be like, there's probably some good reason that they have, right? You should go with that assumption. There's probably some good reason in their mind. It doesn't have to be a good reason to us, right? Or to reasonable people,
or a morally sound reason,
more exactly,
in your opinion.
So exactly, so but there's obviously there are people who've reasoned with themselves that this is a good idea, or this is a good thing, or this is a good person to follow, right? And if it's just one or two quacks, right, like standing on a soapbox in the middle of whatever Times Square, right, just whatever, right, espousing whatever they want, right, that's one thing, right? But if it's thousands of people, right, gathering around this one person, or gathering around this one idea, right, or this phenomenon, then obviously there's more to it than just, oh, these people are just hateful, these people are just bigoted, these people are just bitter, right? But I mean, like, actually not bitter, because bitterness might be, a reason.
Yeah,
like,
that might
if you
be.
full,
But
if you go by.
It's just the thing is, and I think a perfect example of comparing the rise in political power with, and I'll get there in a second, kind of shows that they hone in on one reason that serves the narrative, and it's to paint people as bad people. Like I'll do a lap around my point, but I remember in the NBA recently, the coach of the Indiana Pacers, he's a white guy, Nate Bjorkgren. He's apparently on the hot seat because the Pacers are ninth, or one seat out of a playoff spot. If I'm losing you, it'll make sense. Trust me. Essentially what happened was, in the summer, Nate McMillan, a black coach, was fired. Nate Bjorkgren was hired. And a lot of people were like, this is tragic for the NBA because we lost a black coach. And it's like, don't get me wrong. It could be racist. Like Kevin Pritchard, the president, could be like, I hate black people. Let me get Nate McMillan the hell out of here. He could do that. That could be possible. But if you always go to, it's racist.
The worst assumption.
The worst possible assumption to paint people in a negative light, like all the time, that's so exhausting. And when it comes to Trump, and when he got elected, it was like, oh, well, America's racist, of course. Like, that's why he got in. And then in 2020, when Biden won, that kind of, and it wasn't the narrative went out the window, but it was, they focused more on Biden's the most voted for president in history, not Trump was the second most voted for president in history. So if the country's still racist and all these other racists are coming out to vote for him, is that because there's going to be civil war? Like when people teach Hitler's rise to power, and this is the point I was getting to, it's funny because we're removed from German culture, and it happened so long ago that we go, oh, well, the German people rallied around Hitler in 1933 because he appeared to be a charismatic leader that could lead Germany back to economic success, right? Like Germany was hit so hard from...
Germany was fucked in the ass. After World War One, Germany was fucked in the ass.
They got fucked super hard by World War One, right? So, and they believed in Hitler to bring them back to economic power. It wasn't, Germans are all racist, no shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and it's also people like that, right? People like Hitler, Hitler, what he did was he made this kind of mythos around it, right? So he kind of what's called he had a perverted kind of interpretation of the Ubermensch, right? Superman, right, in English, right? Where not the DC superhero, like Ubermensch, the Superman, right? And he created this kind of entire kind of tale around it, right? Kind of so to draw people in, because we're drawn in by stories, right? And so you get what's called, you identify with stories, right? That's what he did, right? And that's where he took the traditional Hindu symbol, right, into the swastika, right, and turned it into something for himself, right? So the eagle, right, and all that. These images, these icons, right? And you get people rallying around this idea that you've created a whole structure around, right? This whole idea around, and it's very, obviously it's very hateful, and his followers obviously taking things out on the Jews, right? They're scapegoating all their issues, right? Following this kind of narrative that Hitler built, right? And his charisma is whatever, right? We watch him and he's like, right? But like, obviously he was saying something that resonated with these people, right? So you got to look at it from there. And I mean, that's already happened. That's like that's been done, right? But so we can look back at it and obviously be shocked, like we can look at it in horror, right? There's no way of defending it, right? From now this historical perspective, right? But there are the use and looking into the reasons why, right, is so that it doesn't happen again, or it doesn't, or we can identify people who are showing characteristics that were present then, right, that people didn't pick up on, that could lead to that thing, right? So but people mistake that, right, when looking into reasons, right, and identifying characteristics and all this stuff. They take that as like, oh, you're defending it, right? And it's not that simple, right? Like if you're saying it was a good thing or it was the right thing to do, obviously not, right? But if you're like, okay, there must have been a reason behind it. What was that reason, right? What was the reason that they scapegoated this group of people, right? And why were they scapegoating them? What was there to scapegoat, right? And you draw these, you make these connections, right? And so there's bitterness, right? There's economic turmoil, right? There was need for, empowerment, let's say, right? Everyone was kind of torn down, right? Economically and like from the war, right? In anguish and stuff, right? So they need someone to scapegoat.
Desperation.
Right? Desperation, right? The desperate. Yeah. So I mean, like, and none of these are defenses, right? And anybody who's casting this as defense of that, right? You gotta look at them and you gotta be like, okay, so are you really being fair with what I'm saying, right? And some people are coming from a genuine, sincere kind of point, and other people are coming from, you gotta shut this guy down, right? We'll say he was defending, right? And we'll get him out of the way, right?
Well, it's funny. I find this to be another interesting comparison between Trump and Hitler. If I mention to somebody that like anything, not good, but anything that Hitler did well to rise to power, they'll be like, oh, like they'll listen. But if you mention anything that Trump did to contribute to his rise to power, I'll kind of get the side eye, and then I'll have to go, oh, I don't support him. And they go, oh, okay. Which I find weird, because why can't you just objectively analyze the situation? Like,
there's always that disclaimer.
Yeah, do I have to tell people how I lean politically for
not that I support Trump. But
exactly. You always have to throw that in
because
there.
You don't. Most people don't have to say, not that I support Hitler. But there was this. Yeah, because it's kind of implied that you don't. I guess nowadays it's not implied anymore, because people assume everyone supports Hitler, right? All of a sudden, right? Which I think anybody who does, right, genuinely does support Hitler, it has to be cast out, right? It has to be, you don't vote them in, right? Anybody who's actually, treating them favorably, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And I say that is obvious to most of society, all reasonable people and most of society, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the way that it's talked about now, right? It's that, oh, Trump is Hitler, Trump is this and that. People are so ignorant. They've made this meme out of Hitler, basically, right? Hitler was evil, right? Yes. He wasn't just some guy saying the stupid stuff, right? He was smarter. He was, in a lot of ways, smarter than Trump, because he was actually, he wasn't just spouting random shit that,
I doubt if Hitler had access to Twitter, he'd just be like, "This is my journal. Let me. I'm going off."
He was a lot. Yeah, exactly. He was a lot more intelligent in the things he was saying, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't just saying buzzwords, right? Trump a lot of the time just says buzzwords, right? Antifa, right?
Yeah.
China, right?
Could you imagine what would happen if there was rumors that Trump was going to invade a country and another world leader confronted him personally? He would fuck that up. He would, when Neville Chamberlain confronted Hitler in, like, what was it? I think March of 1939. And he was like, no, dude, I'm not going to invade Poland.
He's like,
not at all.
He's like, I talked to Hitler. He was a nice guy. Yeah, that's what he's.
Rest assured, there will be no war.
People look at, like, Winston Churchill.
Exactly. When he came back, there's going to be no war, guys. We're
prediction. Good. But that's, we look at Winston Churchill now, like lots of people, like lots of Zoomers and younger millennials, right? They're like, oh, that Winston Churchill guy, right? He was a dick, right? He was this and that, right? But, like, if you look at the guy before him, right, he certainly wasn't dickish, right? But you kind of needed a dick to run a fucking, like, to fight a war, right? You can't just have some do nothing, like. Right?
Have you ever seen Team America World Police?
I have, but it was a long time.
Fuck, that's a good movie.
I just know Matt Damon.
There's a part at the end of the movie where, and it's actually, like, it's horrifyingly, like, accurate of how today's run. So basically, they have the Film Actors Guild, which is,
the film, FAG.
The acronym for, I'll get canceled if I say it. They have the acronym for it. And then, so Alec Baldwin's giving the licking his own balls speech of how they're going to help the world. And then but basically at the end, they kind of, the speech that the Team America guy says is like, we're dicks, but you guys are associated with assholes and you guys are pussies. And sometimes you need an asshole to fuck, or you need a dick to fuck the asshole because a pussy won't do it. And I think that kind of just relates to what you're saying of,
like Hollywood now also, right?
Yeah, literally.
Like Alec Baldwin now, like, licks his own balls.
Oh, dude, I swear to God, if I see another commercial where it's like, I'm sorry, like, dude, nobody wants. Dude, I'm sure if you asked black people, like, and not that they're like, they all have one voice together, they're one cohesive unit, which is what the mainstream media wants you to think.
They aren't. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I hate to, ruin your life here, but if you asked black people, I'm sure the majority of them, if you say, okay, here are the options. We actually change laws that are archaic, or you get Aaron Paul apologizing in black and white on TV. They would not go with the second option.
Yeah, most of them would be like, who the fuck is Aaron Paul?
Yeah, right? And I would be hurt, but...
I mean, Jesse Pinkman, maybe more people probably know Jesse Pinkman than Aaron Paul. Right?
I was going to go Todd from BoJack Horseman, but it's cool.
I don't watch BoJack Horseman, but I know.
You gotta watch that.
Yeah, sorry. Will Arnett is a good actor.
A great actor.
So, but it's a lot of, virtue signaling, right? That's what the label is for it, right? Just kind of showing your support, right? Raising awareness, that they'll say, right? Which is like raising awareness is,
we're plenty aware at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It's good. Raising awareness is good for a lot of things, right? And in a lot of ways, right? But at some point, it's like, who doesn't know, right? Who doesn't know?
We all know
this, right? We all, exactly.
I thought it was funny when, and I'm so entrenched in the world of sports. The WNBA is fighting for equal pay. And I'm not it's not equal pay of what the NBA gets, because they don't make anywhere near that money. So it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. I think they're talking about percentages, which I don't know the current stat. I think the NBA players make about 50 to 60% of league revenue. And I think the WNBA players make around 30 to 40. Don't quote me on that though, but I think that's what they're fighting for. And recently, Draymond Green, the best defensive player in the NBA, by the way, if anybody else disagrees with me, get fucked. He said that and he's an idiot, so he doesn't know how to use Twitter properly. So he didn't make a thread. He just tweeted a bunch, and it made no sense. But his point was the WNBA should focus on marketing their players' stories and telling those stories in a powerful way. That's one of the reasons why the NBA is great, because we have stars, but the NBA also just doesn't have stars. They have idiots. JaVale McGee became a star because he was stupid for a while. Yeah. And Kelly Oubre as a star because he's sexy. Anyways, I had to say that. But anyways,
I don't know these names.
And Megan Rapinoe came out saying oh, well, Draymond Green's a fucking idiot, and he showed his ass. Thanks for showing you're an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. And then, I mean, they're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
First of all, but then online it became this fight of people were how dare Draymond tell the oppressed people how they should act, and people were Draymond's a black man and he grew up in Michigan, which is lower class, and people were Megan Rapinoe's a lesbian. Well, Draymond Green's been down. It's what the fuck did this become?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
who cares?
It's the meme of oppression Olympics, right? Yes. People scoff at that. They'll be oh, that's not what we're saying. We're just saying that there's these different aspects of a person that you got to look at, and different oppressed things, right? But then when you start comparing people's oppressions, right, that's basically what it is, right? And you can say it's something else, but that's essentially what you're doing, right? So you're saying okay, this person can say this thing, okay, but this person can say more things because they're this, right? But this person can say even more things and overrule this person because they're this, right? And then that's what it is, right? And so I mean, what else would you call it, right? You're kind of competing to see who's the most oppressed, right? And obviously there's different peoples have fought different battles, have struggled different things through different things, but it's not helpful, right, in the slightest, to be shutting down anybody, right, just by getting your oppression over their, putting your oppression over their oppression, right? We say oppression, right? It's, and if you were to ask them what oppression means to them, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of on shaky ground. There's no actual definition that they'll kind of go with, right? Yeah. Oppression could just mean people saying mean things a lot.
Yeah, inconveniencing. Right? It could mean inconvenience, discomfort.
That's not to deny. Yeah, that's not to deny, right, that there's discrimination,
of course not.
Repression, all this stuff, right? But
again, the fact that we have to say that, disclaimer, oppression does exist. I'm not a eugenist.
Exactly. I find because I'm such I like to look at things from both sides, right? Both siderism, as they call it, right? Or from different perspectives, so much that I always find myself having to give these disclaimers, right?
Yeah.
Which is I don't mind sometimes, because I'm I like to at least point out that I acknowledge that there is a reasoning behind whatever, right? So people know that I'm not just saying this without giving thought to it.
And
right?
that's fair. I do that a lot as well too, if I'm being completely honest. So I respect that. I respect that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it is tiresome to be like, oh, I'm not a this, I'm not a Trump supporter, I'm not, not to be a white supremacist or anything. Like, do I really need to say that? Like, why would I need to say that? Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and the thing is that the thing about these disclaimers is that they're like, these spoken disclaimers is that they're apparently becoming more relevant just because there are some people get accused of, you haven't denounced white supremacy enough, right? Or you haven't explicitly denounced it. Like, why would I, like, do I really need to say the words, right? There, like, you will see it a lot of the time in a lot of instances as of recent, right, where people are accused, well, like, silence is violence. That's one thing that's been going on forever.
The
but
most insane conclusion of all time.
Yeah, silence is violence, but also saying things is also violence. So
yeah, and violence is not violence because violence is also. I had a conversation with somebody about
exactly.
This is one thing that drives me like ape shit crazy. Like, gets me so uncontrollably mad when people, like, the concept creep. Like, when people are like, see, you don't know what racism is, because racism is a system. It's like, no. Because that doesn't, you can't flip that. You can't be like, oh, well, here's this oppressive system against black or against marginalized communities. Okay, so how does that work into an interpersonal relationship? I am not a system. I am a human being. And you could say, oh, well, you benefit from said things. Okay, and I'll accept that. But that does not change the fact. If you say, oh, racism, the actual definition of the word, which did not need to be changed at any point in time and will not be able to be changed, as discrimination or prejudice against people for their race or color of skin. Now you can apply that to, because if it's systemic racism, that means the system discriminates against people based on the color of their skin. Yeah. Right. And so it's the same thing with violence. Like, I was trying to define with somebody what violence was. I'm like, violence is like an aggressive physical act against a person. And they're like, but what about violent words? I'm like, that's not a thing. They're like, what about violent emotional acts? I'm like, is there a physical aspect? No. I'm like, then it's not violence. Like, but how do you know when it's violence?
They won't say no. They won't, like, they most likely won't say no. Like, me, the person, but their argumentation is that it's you'll be like, is it a physical aspect? They'll be like, it will turn into a physical aspect.
It could lead to
my emotion, my mental harm, right? Like mental instability, and then I might harm myself, or it causes a toll. I get, you go into depression after a while. So they'll make that argument, right? They'll make that connection, right? That eventually the words will lead to mental harm, like mental health issues,
and therefore it's violence. No, it's violence as soon as there's a physical, aggressive, intentional action. Like, if I am being a dick to you,
make a different word. Right?
There are words: bullying, abuse, harassment. Like, there are words.
The reason that they conflate it, right? Concept creep, like Jonathan Haidt's that talks about it a lot. Go Jonathan. If you're watching this,
getting a tattoo on my chest, trust.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far. Maybe on my back. No.
On my face, over my face.
Right here. Nobody can see it anyways. There's so they intentionally, and we say they, right? Like, we the wokes, right? Just say wokes. I know it's a general term, and people, exactly. But they will purposely do that, right? Purposely kind of blur the lines between different meanings and stuff, because they know the word violence, right, evokes a certain kind of reaction, a certain kind of feeling, right? And right, when you start connecting words to violence, you start saying words are violence, right? Then you start justifying physical violence, right?
Yes.
So when someone physically attacks you, right, you have the right to physically attack them. Now, if you were to include words into the definition of violence, so when someone says words to you, right, you are justified in physically attacking them because they've committed violence against you, so you are justified in committing violence against them. That's the line that they're trying to blur, right? So they can justify these sort of actions and stuff, right? And people might like critique this by saying, oh, you're just, you're making a straw man argument, you're doing this and that. What was all of last year, right? Like there was a lot of violence over and even before, right? There's a lot of Antifa especially, right?
Again, difficult to define. Along with postmodernism, people like Antifa's not even a thing. Like, no, it's a thing just because they don't have like a headquarters.
That's the stupidest argument, right? That's the fucking dumbest argument. Oh, they don't have who's the CEO of Antifa? No, okay, who's the CEO of white supremacy? You fucking bitch! Like, there's the same
Edward Norton in
argument.
1998.
Yeah, exactly.
99,
that's a really good movie.
American changed my life.
Yeah,
changed my life.
It's
Great
such
movie.
a good movie. I'd recommend that movie, especially for people, kind of like, I'm sure there's one or two people who are kind of like right leaning and kind of like going further and further
on that border.
Yeah. Like I'm sure there's always someone like that, right? And I implore you to watch that movie. It's a really good movie, and to show you that there's lots of consequences for being hateful, right? And thinking in those terms.
3 scenes in that movie I cannot watch, but anyways, I'll let you get back. I'll let you get back to you.
We don't want to spoil it either.
Yeah, exactly.
The curb stomp one.
You know what? Actually, surprisingly, like the curb stomp and the jail scene. I'm not going to say it because then it becomes too obvious what it is, and I don't want to ruin it. But the one that actually took me by surprise that I wasn't able to watch was the convenience store part.
What was that part? I haven't seen the movie in a long time.
When Edward Norton and all of his buddies, it's not like it kills anything in the movie, but like they rob a convenience store. That's it. I couldn't watch that part. It was fucked up. But anyways, you're saying there's no CEO of white supremacy, just like there's no CEO of Antifa.
But then the
justifying violence.
And the argument will become, oh, well, the CEO of white supremacy is the president of the United States. It's this and that, right? White supremacy is in all of our institutions. So that's the CEO is the entire thing. But that's not an argument, right? Your argument was that there's no CEO of Antifa, there's no headquarters to Antifa, and this is not strawmanning. This is people's words. So who's the CEO of, right? And Joe Biden's words, it's just an idea, right? It's it doesn't have to be one single leader for a movement or for an idea, so-called idea, right? For it to be tangible, for it to be an actual thing, for there to be lots of people in it, right? And by the way, if we're talking about like CEOs, right, movement leaders, there are factions to it, right? There's I think the most active one is the one in Portland. I forgot their name, right? And they'll always have, like, if it's not Antifa, it'll be like something like Liberation something, right? And so they have leaders, right? Like in those factions, it's just not one central thing, right? And they have these what's called Telegram groups, right? Whatever groups, right, on whatever chatting app or whatever they have, right? There are groups of people, right? It's not just a crazy here, a crazy there, a crazy here, a crazy there, right? There are groups of people rallying in these things. And the other argument is, what's wrong with that? Look at their name. It's anti-fascist. Like, okay, like, is that your Is that where you draw the line?
Do you support the Nationalist Socialist Workers Party?
That's the argument to make. They'll be like, the Nazis weren't actually socialists, but what it's in the name.
It's in the name, yeah.
It's a national.
Then North Korea is probably the most like
it's the democratic
progressive place. They're Democratic People's Republic. They're democratic and they work for the people.
Exactly, and it's not a false equivalence at all, because your argument is that Antifa, right, is short for anti-fascist, and what's bad about being anti-fascist, right? Yeah. Your argument is that it's in the name, right, being anti-fascist, right? Therefore, it must be good because fascism is bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fascism is bad, and being against fascism, being in the literal sense anti-fascist, is a good and reasonable thing, right? But when you put it in capitals, right, when Antifa is capitalized, anti-fascist is capitalized, you're talking about a group, right? Mm-hmm. You're not you're talking about a specific group. You're not talking about you yourself being against fascism, right? It's literally just a label, right? If Republicans started like calling themselves, anti-puppy killers, right? And if you vote Democrat, right, are you for puppy killers, right? Yeah. It's in the name. That's what we're for.
That sounds like right? that sounds like my Tinder
arguments I've ever fucking heard.
That sounds like my Tinder bio strategy for like 3 years. I was like, swipe left if you support apartheid, but nobody knows what apartheid is apparently, because the generation of people in the dating pool my age are just fucking idiots apparently, and they don't fucking remember what apartheid was in grade 7 social studies. So a lot of people support apartheid on Tinder is what I'm saying. But yeah, I guess
really?
Yeah, dude, they're all swiping left on me. But no, you're right, and it kind of relates to like the Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter movements, right? Like the words "all lives matter." Nobody would have taken issue with that like in 2010. If you're like all lives matter, I believe all lives matter, they'd be like, thank you. Yeah. Now it's like you're a white supremacist, and I'm not. Again, a disclaimer: I'm not an all lives matter person, and I do believe that Black lives do matter. I'm very, very skeptical of the organization Black Lives Matter, which will get me fucking canceled into oblivion, but I don't care anymore. Because lockdown has crushed my will to live. But you know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's like the names of the organizations and their purposes and what it looks like, they're all different things.
Exactly. That's it's a lot of the time it's very like it seems purposeful. Like I said, I don't want to, say that like cast intentions onto people, but it seems purposeful, right? So to say Black Lives Matter, right, is no duh, right? That Black Lives Matter, the lives of Black people matter, right? I don't know how many different ways I can say it before, right, it like just becomes nothingness, right? But I agree with you that Black Lives Matter. Okay, that's a disclaimer right there. Black Lives Matter, right? So but when you put in, now that's the thing with like Antifa, right? You put it in capitals. You're not just talking about Black Lives Mattering, right? You're literally talking about, right, the organization, right? But the leaders, right, explicitly are Marxists. They are trained Marxists in their own words. What's her name? Patricia Cullors, right? I think her name is the leader of one of the co-founders.
Was she the person who said that? Was she the person who said that COVID is a horrible virus, but the real virus is capitalism, and she bought a $5 million home or some shit?
I don't know about the first part, but yeah, she's the one who had the $5 million house just recently.
That was her,
because all those donations.
Yeah, that was her. There was an interview. She said, the real virus is capitalism. It's like, motherfucker, you just bought a $5 million home.
There's a lot of things, right? Like, and there, I mean, so it's so like people for in that terms, right, where like socialists, Marxists, communists, right, where they start enjoying the fruits of capitalism, right? The argument is, well, that's the system that we're in, so I have to, you can't just say that I can't partake in the system. It's the system we're in.
Yeah, but if you're trying to lead a revolution, if you're trying to tear the system down, you can't be like, oh, but I get it. Like, I get to partake, but you guys don't. But I'm tearing it down with you. Like, no, dude, fuck off.
Not even that. Like, I understand that. Okay, look, if you're really anti-capitalist, you can't just 100% not partake in it. And
you're right.
You have to pay your bills and stuff. Like, I get it, right? You have and nowadays, right, it's important to have a smartphone, right, or just a cell phone.
Yeah,
right? I get that, right? But if your argument is that, this is just me partaking in this system that we live in, and then you buy a new iPhone every year, you have a MacBook, right? And these are the most expensive parts, right? Like, things that you can buy cheaper versions of that. Why are you paying these mega corporations, right, only for them to last longer, right? That you keep on giving them money to. You can buy cheaper versions of that, and they work perfectly fine, right? I have a PC. I don't have an iPhone, right? I have what's called Android phone, but I get Google is a big company, but I mean, Apple products are more expensive. Why are you spending that money that you can be spending towards charities, right, for one thing, or to your cause in general,
even then,
right? Especially
you can
if you're
buy
a leader of BLM.
You can buy the newest laptop, but if you're buying every year, if you buy a new car it's that, right? It's exactly. The over excess.
Exactly.
It's becoming a staple. You're just buying into consumers' culture. And if you're saying
the new thing, the most expensive version of that new thing, right?
Yes. And if you're I want to build up Black communities, so I'm going to buy a $5 million home when I complain about capitalism all the time in a predominantly white, rich, upper class neighborhood, because I'm building Black communities and I'm against capitalism. You sound like a grifter. You sound like a fucking grifter.
Exactly. And the other thing is that they how do I put this? You're saying that you want to tear down capitalism, right? You want the system to be eradicated and put in a new system, right? And at the same time, you're buying these expensive things, right? Buying the literal top of the fruits of capitalism, right? But and saying it's just me partaking in the system, right? What you're saying is that I'm enjoying these things. I just don't want the rest of the world to enjoy these things, right? That's basically why do you want to tear down the system that other people are also enjoying, and other people enjoying the fruits of these things, right? These technologies and stuff, right? Why are you why is it okay for you to enjoy these fruits, but you want to get rid of the system that allows others to enjoy these fruits of capitalism as well?
Well,
right?
it's
not to say capitalism is perfect. A disclaimer again.
Of course not. Yeah, of course not. Yeah. Of course not. Well, it's like those priests that are gay, or the ones who end up touching kids, who are being gay is a sin. Okay, buddy. Okay. I got you.
It's projecting, right?
Yeah, right. And again, if you're a priest and you're go suck as much penis as you want as a dude, not chicks, that's gross. If they're if you're obviously being gay is okay. Exactly. You're having compassion, right? Or if you're I can't be a part of the church anymore because they reject homosexuality. Okay. But if you're you can't be gay, that's wrong. And then you're sucking dick.
Exactly.
People are gonna crucify you when they find that out.
Why
of
do
course.
you get to enjoy the dicks? Nobody else gets it.
Why can't I enjoy dick, right?
Exactly. I like dick from time to time.
Who doesn't like penis from time? I mean, a lot of people, but
my girlfriend's gonna be really surprised.
Exactly.
No, it's the same thing. So these arguments, right? These accusations, these descriptions, characteristics that we point to left wing, right, can equally apply to a right wing in a lot of ways, right? Well, maybe not equally, but they can apply in a lot of ways, in significant ways, right? Cancel culture, right? Cancel culture now. At this point, it's kind of at this point, it's disingenuous to say that it doesn't exist, right? But second of all, it's kind of you're willfully ignorant at best if you're one of those extremely online people and you don't think it's a left-wing issue significantly, right? The right wing, we already know that it's happened and it continues to happen, right? Obviously, right? These ultra religious people try to get specific artists or specific celebrities, right, off of shows, right, or canceled, right, of the new term that we have for it, right? And there's people obviously get kicked out of church, right? And people get cast out of different things,
or
right?
they troll, like Mila Yiannopoulos.
Yeah, exactly.
They just troll to get reactions. Like, that's still bullshit.
Exactly. No, it's exactly. So provocateurs, right? Like Milo, right? Yeah. So there are people like that, right? And for the right wing to protect those people, just so that the left doesn't, have any ammo, right? That's you're losing your own credibility by protecting the people who are doing the same things, right? Or doing the same things yourself, right? That you're saying that the other side is doing, but it's disingenuous to say that the left wing does not have it does not have power at all, right? Culture is a powerhouse, right?
Big time.
Culture is so important, right? And that's like a big reason why I like sociology and sociological thought, and film, right, and stuff like that. Culture is very important, and to say otherwise, right, and to pretend like culture doesn't affect politics, right? But at the same time, also saying that what's it called? Make the personal political, right? Everything is political, right? You're denying that culture is important, right? While at the same time saying everything should be political, right? And so, but denying that culture has politics, culture is important, is willfully ignorant, right?
Big time.
Willfully ignorant, right? When all the movies, right, are everywhere, right? We all enjoy pop culture. We're all listening to music, right? We all enjoy these other things, right? And pop culture, I mean, especially, right? So culture can also include religion, which is right wing in what's called, I think, inherently, you could say right wing, because inherently conservative in a lot of ways, right? You have to conserve the religion and the old thought processes and stuff, but like pop culture is what I mean, right? Pop culture, music, characters, TV shows, film, just the media in general, right? Mainstream media, big media, tech, right? Technology, social media. You have a stranglehold on all of these things. They're all spouting the same, what's called talking points, the buzzwords that you subscribe to and stuff. That obviously means that you have some sort of influence on these things, right? And it's hard to deny, right, that it's not the left wing who has power over culture.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's really hard to deny. I'll ask you this, because we should get wrapping up pretty soon. What's one thing? Yeah, I almost lost that for a second. What's one thing you've learned recently that you want to share?
Learned recently. So do you want, like, I don't know, like trivia, or do you want
whatever you think is most interesting? If you're like, honestly, I didn't know I could kick my dad's ass till 3 days ago.
No. Yeah. But okay. So one thing I learned, it was actually yesterday, I think. I learned, you know how like there's this, like, some restaurants and shops and stuff will be like ye old boutique and stuff like that. I just learned that ye old is supposed to be the Y, right?
Oh, okay.
It's supposed to be it's supposed to be pronounced the, like, in actuality. So what it was is that the printing press, when it began, it needed apparently like something to do with like German and English, where English had these extra letters, and one of the letters was, I forgot what it was called, thorn or something like that, and that letter was the th sound, right? But the German or something like that did not have that letter, right? But the printing press, right? They did not have that letter, but they had something similar, and it was the Y, right? And so they used the Y. They were like close enough, and so they would use that instead of the the sounding letter, the th sounding letter, right? And that's where the ye comes from. So ye old is actually supposed to be v old, like when you pronounce it, right? And that blew my mind. I just learned that yesterday.
That's actually cool as fuck. That's
that's
probably the most interesting, like,
exactly. And it was so
random
off
bit of
topic from the
information.
Other life hack. Apparently, scented dryer sheets. Bees and wasps hate scented dryer sheets. So if you, like, I don't know, put them around somewhere that you don't want bees, they apparently hate it. So
That's good. Okay, and was that going to be your underrated bit of information that you think people should know, or is there another one?
No, underrated. This is more on topic. Underrated.
Okay.
So there's this idea called star manning. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, I haven't.
So we know straw man, right? Yep. Straw man, for those who don't know, is that when you make an argument that when you're arguing against an argument that your opponent isn't even making, right? When you're making kind of like a straw man, right? Like a hollow fake version of the actual argument, right? That's what you're arguing against. That's what we see a lot of straw men, like people like accusing this and that, right? Of just making blanket statements about conservatives or about lefties, right? Just making straw man, right? And then there's the steel man, where steel man is when you, so it's the opposite of that. It's arguing against the best interpretation of your opponent, right? So that's what steel manning is, when you give them the most charitable argument, right? And you attack that argument, right? And star manning is kind of an upgrade from steel manning. It was just like, I think it was just coined like earlier this year, I think. So this goes back to like just learning it, but it's underrated. Steel manning is underrated, and star manning. So star manning is when you you argue against the most charitable version of your opponent's argument, as well as the most charitable version of your opponent, right? Because when you go against your opponent, right, and whoever you're arguing against, right, and you're assuming that they're coming from a bad faith angle, right? You think they're coming from with malicious intent, right? And it obviously hinders the arguments in a way, because you are coming from a place of, you know, in a way you're coming to attack the person, kind of, right? So so that's very underrated, is giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
Right? When they're making arguments, when they're passionate about something, you know, and you think there's only one way that they could possibly have meant, and it's the worst possible thing, that the way you interpret is that's the only way, right? It doesn't help anything, right? Because the person, at the end of the day, right, if you keep on saying these things if you keep on believing this about those people, those kind of people will obviously feel that they are not being heard, right? Their needs aren't being heard, in a way, right? And that's how you get people like Trump, right? Where there's a large demographic of people feel like they're, at least the first time, a large demographic of people that feel like they're not being heard by certain people, certain politicians,
by a majority.
Majority, right?
Yeah, I would say the majority. They feel like they're slandered against the majority.
Exactly. So, and someone who, I'm not saying that Trump does it, I'm not saying Trump like understands them at all, right? But at least portrays himself as someone who understands them.
He met them where they were at, you know, like the common argument is, and I'll keep it short just so you can keep on your train of thought. When people, you know, when Hillary wouldn't campaign in certain smaller red states because she's like, well, I got this in the bag. But Trump actually went there and shook their hands, and people were like, but Hillary's policies benefit.
She flew over like Wisconsin and stuff.
Yeah, Hillary's policies benefit those people more.
Yeah.
Trump met them. Oh, but that doesn't make sense.
It makes a personal connection, right? It feels like they're being heard. It feels like they're being listened to, right? And they're not treated as though their needs are unreasonable, right? They might be unreasonable, but to them, if it's a large enough amount of people who believe that way, obviously there's some sort of reason that a lot of people are thinking is a good reason, right? And so to Steelman, that is, or to a Starman, which comes from the Bowie song, right? Starman. It is the best way of going about debate, I think, and it's very underrated. Just scrolling through Twitter, even, right, seeing these accusations against people like, oh, this guy said this, right? This guy said this, right? Go to the actual source, right? Underrated is actually like fact checking for yourself, right? Going through the facts, you read the headlines, you see the clips, like you said, right? And yeah, just giving people, just seeing the best in people, right? I think that's very underrated. And
like you said that about, sorry, I like how you said that about going on Twitter, because I think I do a pretty good job of that in person, but I think I do a really, now I think about it, I do a really shit job of it on social.
Yeah, I mean, like, we all do it, right? It's not a left or right thing, right? We all kind of are in our tribes, right? And we want to protect our tribes, right? So we don't want to give any, we don't want to create any opening for for our opponent to make us weaker, right? And so what we'll do is we'll guard any accusations against us, right? And we'll just like fight as forcefully as possible against the other side, right? Against the other interpretations and stuff.
Yeah, big time. Okay, then I think this looks like a pretty good opportunity for us to wrap up. This is a lot of fun, man. I really enjoyed this. This is good.
Yeah, so did I, man. Thanks for having me.
It was nice to, us centrist warriors, and even if you're not, I'm lumping you into it. Yeah. It's too late. You're already
I mean, like, I only call myself a centrist if I was really to be asked, but I don't like the labels anyways, right? Because there's just these assumptions that people cast onto any sort of label that you put.
Right? Very postmodern of you. I respect it.
Thank you. Yeah. I like it. I like kind of having a broad perspective on things. So yeah,
I like that, and I like the way you analyze things, man. It's awesome. Is there anything you'd like to leave the people with before you go?
Don't got much going on, but you can follow me at Turbanium on Twitter, on Instagram. Turbanium, like turban, and then IUM. A second Instagram called Culture Zealot. So that's more of kind of like little cultural analysis and stuff. Don't have much going. Don't have a podcast or anything to plug. Maybe I'll make a podcast if your listeners or viewers like what I have to say. I'll give you a run for your money.
Yeah, dude. There's no such thing as competition. Just if the podcast community gets better,
there's such thing. There's such thing as competition. I'm running you down.
Yeah.
Leave something in the comments.
Clearly, I wasn't the one who grew up with Indian parents.
Yeah. Clearly, yeah.
Yeah, us. I think the world's greatest cultural oxymoron is the Brazilian flag says order and progress on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, India isn't so great either. We have nothing on our flag, so I guess we can.
Yeah. It should say lateness, and I'll do it later, but maybe that's just me. Anyways, Guruch, this is a great time. Thanks, man. We'll debrief once I hit stop, but everybody else have a great week. And this is us signing off. Peace out.